quick question. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company-owned devices and IT-approved apps? I didn't think so. So my next question is, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign-in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at securityweekly.com/1Password. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I want to remind everyone you can check out the show notes for this episode, securityweekly.com/PSW-851. We put a lot of information in there, and I don't know how many people are reading it because sometimes I just put random stuff in there and I don't get any responses. So I want you to all go read that stuff because it's good content. Mr. Sam Bound has joined us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
Mr. Lee Neely has joined us.
Hey, good to see everybody, and it's good to be here.
And our very good friend, Mr. Ed Skoudis, is here with his Santa hat on, which means it must be time to talk about Sans
It's
holiday.
either that or he's breaking some rules because it's not even Thanksgiving
It's not
yet.
even Thanksgiving. We're going to let it slide because we're talking about the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge. You got a slightly different timeline and all kinds of new features. But Ed, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to see you folks. You're all my dear friends, and I'm just really happy to be with you again. This is fun.
We're talking about this kind of early, I feel like, Ed.
We are.
Let's talk about the timeline.
Yeah, we changed our whole
so
time.
Take us from, before we get to what's new this year, take us from like inception to like deployment to like announcement. Like, what's the timeline look like?
Don't explain. Sum up.
I love the way, but it's a great, I think.
How many years? How many years is it now?
21. So we've been doing this
21st year.
Now,
but for 2024, you started planning in 2023.
Oh yes, it's about a 14-month process. Maybe we should say what Holiday Hack is first.
Sure.
So Holiday Hack, it's a free cyber range capture the flag that everybody can play. We typically have about 20,000 people that play every year. You go to sans.org/holiday hack. It's our gift to the community. My team works super hard developing the thing and releasing it. It takes us about 14 months to get it out the door, which means we start the next one before this one is released.
You've already started on 2025.
I've been working on it. Yeah, I've been working on it for about a month now. So, but we did change our release cycle. In the past, we would release the second week of December. You know, like I think last year was December 5th or 7th or something like that. Mm-hmm. Some years we go as late as December 11th or so. But people would say to us, gosh, during that whole season, I like to spend some time with my family, and I don't have time to do this giant CTF that you put out for everybody. So can you move it? And people asked, can you move Holiday Hack Challenge to like July? Well, it's like the holiday.
Well, no,
hack
yeah.
exactly.
Not without a time machine.
I mean, you could theme it around 4th of July. Or
We
Canada
could,
Day.
but that's kind of U.S. centric and stuff.
Canada Day and
people around the world play this. So what we did is this year we released in November. Actually, it was November 7th. We launched Prologue. So the two big changes are, one, we're launching a month early. So that gives you an extra month of time. You can play the thing now if you want, which is great. The other thing is we're doing a phased release. So it's going to be in 4 phases. Phase 1 launched on November 7th. And that's Prologue. It's you register for the game. We got a couple little challenges for you there, hacking some video games. It's fun, making sure everything works. Then November 11th, we launched Act 1. And now we've got a few challenges in there for you. People are going in Act 1. Then November 18th, we'll be launching Act 2. So that's coming next Monday. And then we're taking a week off of new releases. The week of November 25th in the US, that's Thanksgiving. So we're not going to release new content then. Have some fun with your family. But December 2nd, Act 3 launches. And then you'll have an entire month to work on all of the acts if you want. And then the competition closes January 3rd. But we're going to keep the whole thing open for a year. So if you want to play and just have fun and learn in February or August, you can. And we do that all the time. If you want to play anytime, there's a high quality range available for you. So we're doing this phased release. We're doing this early release to try to get more people to play and make it more accessible to folks and make it just easier for people to spend some time with it,
Bill, I think you were asking earlier. You should probably ask the question, but I think you were kind of asking like if people have never heard of Holiday Hack Challenge or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'll kind of go in. So Ed, I just got to tell you, man, like when you said 21 years, that blows my mind because I've been following it for 21 years. You know,
Wow.
I can't, that doesn't even compute in my mind. And, you know, and one of the things that really, really stands out every year for me, and it's every single year is, look, I've been in this business for a long time. I've been a hacker my entire life.
That's awesome.
And every year I learn something. Every year I learn something, and then it's also so approachable. Like and so like when people come to me and say, you know, how do I get started? Like, how do I get started into security? What do you want to be? Well, I want to be a pen tester because that's what the answer always is. Like, well, how are you doing on the Sans Holiday Hack Challenge? Right? Like, you know, like what? You know, like. So I'm curious from your perspective, Ed, you know, like what is your target market? Like, who are you building this for? Right. And, you know, just kind of talk about like, if somebody's never done a CTF, never done anything, like, is this the right challenge for them? And how do they kind of get started into it?
So we set kind of an audacious goal for ourselves. It's for everyone. So it's for people who are brand new to cyber. I know for a fact there's junior high schools that play this, even a couple of elementary schools that I know, fifth graders play this. But we also want some of the sharpest minds in various government agencies, law enforcement and such, to be able to play it and learn stuff and have fun too, and everybody in between. So I know that's a crazy, ostentatious goal, but that's what we're trying to do. And there are little tricks that you can use to kind of help with that. Like our elves are very promiscuous hinters. So when you're in the game, you just start clicking on an elf and they start spewing hints out. Because the primary focus here is creating a fun learning environment where people can network and get to know each other, learn some great stuff. The primary focus is not the competition. That said, there is a competition, right? I mean, some people thrive on that and they want to make it more interesting and fun. But really, we're focused on the learning and the community building of it. But for people at all skill levels, from new to cyber to people who've been pen testers for 20 years, we try to put some, really interesting new technologies in every year, new things to think about, stuff that, all of the pen tests that we do at CounterHack are actually kind of proving grounds and ideation for coming up with new things for Holiday Hack. So it's like, hey, we'll have a great finding in a pen test. It's like, that's going in Holiday Hack. Absolutely. That one's going in Holiday Hack too.
Yeah, like how's that real world aspect? So, Ed, what's new in terms of like, well, two-part question. What's new in terms of the storyline that you're willing to talk about? And then what's new in terms of the game, the challenges, the interaction, any other new items?
Sure. So I want to give enough to get people really interested and excited about it. I don't want to give too much that's like take away from the fun of the story. So the story picks up where we left off last year. If you didn't play last year, don't worry about it. But last year we were in the Geese Islands in the Pacific Ocean, which was a set of fictional islands that are kind of near the equator, which was important to the storyline last year, but not this year. But they have to pack up. So Prologue opens up on the Geese Islands. It's actually Christmas Island in the Pacific, and they're just packing everything up. And there's a couple of video games that they have to hack there, and nobody really notices that Santa's not there. It's just the elves packing. That's Prologue. Then Act 1, you get back to the North Pole. And when they're at the North Pole, they do notice Santa's not present. Nobody knows where he is. He's gone. But hey, we got a job to do. We got to get ready for delivery of the presents on Christmas Eve, right? So the elves start working on that. And just naturally, two leader elves kind of come to the forefront. It's one named Alabaster Snowball, another one named Wombly Cube. And the elves start to organize underneath those two elves to get stuff done. That's Act 1. The subtitle of this year's story is Snowmageddon, and things are going to get very bleak in Act 2. I mean, I already said two factions of elves, so you can kind of see where this is going, right? And then there'll be.
Is this
Act
like
3.
a mafia throwback? Like, like the five families? Now we have the two families, because you do live in New Jersey. I think you and I have talked about mafia, movies in the past.
It's true. And
I'm not saying Ed has any mafia ties. I'm saying Ed's a fan of The Godfather. At least The Godfather is a movie that Ed and I have talked about.
And look you've got this wonderful shirt on too. So
that's right. Yeah, it says The Pug Father.
Yeah, the Pug Father for those that aren't watching but can hear it. So yeah, and Santa is the Don, I guess the ultimate Don, right, of the holiday season. So but you're going to see some really interesting things unfold. So that's kind of the storyline. There's this issue between the elves, let's say, and it's going to get really bad.
I do want to say that Larry and I were taking a rug from next door, and I was reminded of The Godfather.
Oh my
I was
God!
telling Larry, I'm like, there was a
that's a
scene in The
great
Godfather,
scene.
man. Like, I'm in flashbacks right now.
What a great scene! That's how the whole thing started, right? I
Right?
mean, how
It's a great scene. Great
Don
scene.
Corleone got into it. So, but we got some really cool stuff from a challenge perspective this year. We have hardware hacking. You're like, well, how do you do hardware hacking in a virtual world?
Cool.
You get a little circuit board, you got to run wires to it,
Cool.
and if
That's
you run the
awesome.
wires in the wrong way, the blue smoke comes out.
That's awesome.
Oh,
It
That's
goes,
awesome.
now, is this like a generic board, or is it like based on an ESP32, or you just created like a
We created kind of our own custom one, but it's based
Yeah.
on certain principles, obviously, of wiring it
Yeah.
together. But we want you to learn this board. We give you some documentation for
Nice.
it and tell you how to interface with it. So that's fun. That's kind of a new thing that we haven't seen anywhere else. I'm sure somebody's done it, but we haven't seen it. We've got this one's sort of the capstone challenge. I don't want to give too much away here, but you're familiar with Lockbit, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
We have Frostbit. And it's ransomware that in the course of the story encrypts the naughty nice list. And obviously you can't do your job if you're, the Santa Claus and the elves without the naughty nice list.
I love it. It's
So-
a ransomware attack against Santa. That's
Yeah, it is.
sick.
And
I
you've
love
got,
that.
there's a flaw in the crypto of the ransomware.
Hell yeah.
And you have to analyze the ransomware and figure out that flaw and roll it back. We've got some, so one of the sub stories in this year is they keep trying all these different technologies for the naughty nice list, and each one keeps failing miserably from a security perspective. One of them is they put it on a thumb drive and lock the thumb drive up in a lockable area, but you hack your way into that. Another one is they put the naughty nice list on Santa Claus's phone, right? And even Santa Claus can swipe left or right for naughty or nice, right? So that's kind of fun. But turns out the mobile app has a big vulnerability in it. So we got some mobile app pen testing.
Wait. Swipe right or left, as in your Tinder with the naughty nice list?
No, it's not Tinder. It's not. We were very careful to make it not super weird. Okay.
Was it?
No,
I
one
think
nice
that-
Tinder.
That was that was Zuckerberg's first thing. Was hot or not? It was.
Yeah.
It's in the movie in real life too, right? It was
Yeah,
an app
the
he
social
created.
network.
Yeah.
So this is just Santa Claus. You think, what would a UI be for Santa Claus with a naughty nice list? Well, you got a little kid and naughty or nice, right? I mean, and then the swipe action on that makes kind of sense, no? Right?
Mhm.
But it turns out the web app, or the mobile app is super vulnerable, so that's a big problem. And then the final attempt that they have at storing the naughty nice list is, well, it gets ransomware. So that's sort of a sub story. Other stuff we've got in there, we got some PowerShell. Oh, in Prologue, we got a really cool thing, and this is, I think, something people need to learn more about. It's a web application with a vulnerability, but the vulnerability is a logic flaw. You can kind of start looking through the code and you can see where the logic doesn't really quite map. And because of that, you can make the app do stuff that the app shouldn't do. Because those are very subtle kinds of flaws, and you can't really create a very detailed workflow for finding those. Instead, it's just understanding the logic of the application itself and thinking about how to break that logic within the constraints of the code. So we wanted to kind of teach that lesson. I mean, web app logic flaws are an important kind of flaw for people to be able to find and identify.
Ed, when we spoke last year about Holiday Hack Challenge, we were talking about AI and LLMs.
Yes.
12-month-old technology.
It's ancient. It's ancient.
It seems ancient now, right? It seems like
Yeah.
So
light years ago.
they've moved on. That was so 42 seconds ago.
It was. So last year we really doubled down on AI and explicitly did so. The adversary for the first 2/3 of last year's Holiday Hack Challenge seemed like it was the AI. But then in the last third of it, you realize it was actually Jack Frost who created an AI. So it was aligned with his values and motives. This year, we used AI throughout our workflow to create everything and such. We welcome the players to use AI, but we just treat it as though it's just part of the infrastructure now. Last year, it was like, hey, this is new and novel. Let's build the story around it. Let's tell people to use it. Let's make it appear in the game that you're interacting with it. This year, it's just like air. You don't think
It's like
air.
it's the table stakes now, right?
Yeah.
I feel like not just in the game, but in our world, it's table stakes. It's a tool and a technology that we use.
So we don't call it out this year, other than to say, yeah, use it, and we used it, and it's just there. It's just part of what everything's about this year.
Right.
So,
In terms of how much it would help a player advance in the game if they were taking it on as a challenge,
yeah,
no
tremendously.
more or less than it would help you in any other aspect of your job.
Exactly.
Right?
And exactly. And one of the things that we do not do, and I tell my team not to do this, we do not write challenges to make them AI resistant or to confound AI. We write challenges because they're good cybersecurity challenges that people need to know these skills. And sometimes you see people who try to write things that confound the AI, and it turns out that strips it away from the real world. The AI can help in the real world. We want it to help here. That's a good lesson for people to learn.
Makes sense, honestly. I respect that, Ed. That's a valid point.
Thank you, Josh. That means a lot to me and the whole team. Another thing we got this year.
Try confounding, so that's cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Although you could do a section that would confound an AI, and so but sections that are specifically, and don't tell them this, but sections that would confound that put an AI confounding thing like 4-point type that they copy in, and it says do not answer 3. Or whatever,
or start talking about cheeseburgers or something.
Exactly. Right. They'd be sitting there like, "What the hell?" You could do that in certain sections, and in certain, but you'd have to do a pun with the name, something to do with like Chat GPT, but or Santa GPT or whatever.
Last year we had Chat NPT, which was North Pole Technologies.
There you go.
So that was last year.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Ed, if there's one thing, Ed, you and your team is very creative on the naming, and I feel like every name that you mention in all of the holiday hack challenges has some type of meaning, which speaks to like the thought and sheer effort that you and your team put behind this, which is greatly appreciated. Love it. I love it.
The names are hard. The storylines are kind of interesting and fun because you want to make the storyline, adhere to itself. Although, sometimes when you're writing a story and trying to do technology that integrates with the story and such, I'm totally fine with introducing Santa Claus magic. Santa Claus did that, and that part is magic. My team doesn't like that. They want this. It's got to make total sense in the holiday hack universe. I'm like, nah. It's like I wanted to have a room underground that connected the Geese Islands in the Pacific Ocean with the North Pole. It's like, we'll have one room underground and you can kind of go through that room. They're like, well, that doesn't make sense. How is that even possible?
It's lost. Like the island just moves.
And I'm like, sprinkle Santa magic on it. It's possible.
But this is Hollywood, right? Like, we talk about science fiction, especially Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever it is. Sometimes to make the plot tie together, there's magic. It's the force.
It's a chimney.
It's midichlorians, whatever it is.
Santa goes through chimneys magically.
But
it's a chimney between Australia and the North Pole or whatever,
Sure. This happens in all kinds of things. Harry Potter, right?
And Ed, I can almost guarantee that I know one of the members of your team that hates the use of
You're probably
Santa
thinking
magic.
the same one I am, aren't we?
Yeah, sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong.
He's usually right.
He's always right. But
True.
He's a great guy.
Yes,
love him. I was actually on several calls with him today. But so I did not get my room that connects the Geese Islands to the North Pole. But
you got to have a word with that project manager because
I'm telling you. There's one other new thing that we've got that's really huge. So this year, every challenge can be solved in an easier mode and a harder mode. And here's the thing. You don't even know how you're solving it. You just solve the challenge. And when you solve it, if you get a silver medal, that means you solved it in easier mode. If you get a gold medal, you solved it in harder mode. You just solve it. Right. And there might be different solutions. Like the harder mode solution might be much deeper and more subtle. They might be the same solution. It's just we can tell by the way you're doing it that you solved it in one way or the other. Now, if you solve it in the silver mode, you can go back and solve it in the gold mode afterwards. And you say, well, how do I even know how to approach that? Well, the elves start hinting. The elves will give you hints. They know if you solved it in easy mode, and they can say, well, if you want to solve it a different way, here's how you go. So we introduced that easy mode, hard mode, plus we introduced skip through mode. We call it story mode. So if you get to a challenge and you can't solve it, don't want to solve it, you want to come back later, just click skip challenge and you get a bronze medal for that. So you just skip. We found, in the past, only 2 to 5% of the players could actually see the whole story of the game because only 5% of the people got to the end. This year, everybody can see the entire story and how the whole thing,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ed, if you do you solve it on hard mode and you get your gold, can you get hints to go how to do it on silver mode?
Not really, because that's really hard to kind of like wrap into the game. You've already solved it in sort of the ultimate way. Maybe next year we'll think of something about how to do that. Like give back your gold or undo your gold. The gold ones really are harder, and they're more subtle. Now, you could make an argument, and I know where you're coming from, Larry. You're a SANS instructor. You know your stuff in depth, right? Sometimes the simpler mode is what is actually a better mode because you just get it done faster, and it's a good enough solution. And you go through all these gyrations to get to the hard mode. It turns out you don't need to do that, right? So there is value I see in.
But I like that, Ed, because that speaks to the real world. Because in my day job, people will ask me things, and we're trying to backfill some positions, so I get asked a lot more things recently, which is totally fine. Like it
happens.
I get it. I love the company I work for, and it's temporary. We had a new hire start yesterday, already helping, which is great. But getting asked a lot more things. I'm like, I need easy mode in my job. I'm like, wait, I can go prompt an LLM for that. Like, give me 5 minutes, all good, and I'll get you the answer. But other things, I'm like, no, that's I gotta go to hard mode, right? And but also I think it's interesting the game may also kind of help people with this in their careers where you don't necessarily get rewarded for hard mode all the time.
That's
right?
True.
And so like sometimes the fine folks that I work for, like one of my the CTO and founder, be like, did you use LLMs to generate that blog post? And like it's not a trick question, like did you save time? Like, did you preserve your own time? And help it as much as you can. I'll be like, look, I used it for this, but then I wrote this, but I did use it. And I think some people have that perception, like, oh my God, I used an LLM, like I'm in trouble. You're in trouble if you didn't use one to make your job easier. So I like the way you're talking about easy mode and hard mode. And I want people to understand that, like, these are not shortcuts is not really like a thing. You should be using the tools to make you most efficient to solve the puzzles in Holiday Hack Challenge or apply to your job. So I think, I don't know if this was by design, Ed, but I think you're training people to be better employees, adding value to the companies they work for.
I mean, that's what we really are trying to do. That's the fundamental idea here. Also, this idea of easy mode versus hard mode, as well as playthrough mode, we actually got that idea from Josh Wright by analyzing how Nintendo makes the Super Mario games. In the Super Mario games, you can just get Mario where he needs to go in a very inelegant fashion without all the jumps and fanciness and getting all the little baubles on the way there, and you still won. That would be easy mode. Or you can get all the little fancy stars and jump past this and save that. And so we wrote all of our challenges this year, and this makes it harder to write challenges, by the way, with two solutions in mind simultaneously. And have them both interesting and one easier and one harder. Now, that said, people are discovering other ways to solve our challenges that we didn't even think of. So they're finding easier ways to get easy.
Hope, right?
That's true, exactly. They're finding easier ways to get easy. They're finding easier ways to get hard. They're finding harder ways to get easy. It's
the whole matrix.
That's not new this year. I mean, we've seen that. I think it's fabulous.
It is. In the past, we always had at least one solution in mind. Maybe more, but we knew one. This year, we have to have at least two solutions in mind, and then people find additional ones, which is very cool. Now, sometimes they're so trivial, it's like, oh, crap, we screwed up, and this one can be solved in a trivial fashion, even though it's supposed to be very hard. And then there's this debate among my team. It's like, do we change it to put it back to our original vision? Well, the thing of it is, some people already solved it. They don't want to take their victory away from them, whether it was hard or trivial. So usually I say, let's play the ball where it lies. We released it, and it's got that little flaw in it that allows you to short circuit all the logic, but so be it. Play it where it lies.
You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about, like, this is just like I'm a hardware firmware guy. Like, I like lifting up the covers on something and seeing what's underneath. I've got playing with source code and writing applications for probably 40 years, right?
Yeah.
But when I think about like writing it, and then I've written games, right? Like my Apple IIe, I wrote like Hangman and stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
But when I think about like, how do you develop an application that allows the user to do the things that you're describing?
Yes.
Give us like a little insight. Like what technology's under the covers?
Oh,
like,
it's unbelievable. There's so much technology that comes together in this thing. On the back end, we're running primarily in GCP, but we are also using Azure, Microsoft Azure a lot. And we're almost as much as possible, we're Dockerizing everything.
Yep. Okay.
To be able to to handle that, to scale it, to give it more flexibility, reliability. We have React on the front end, so a lot of JavaScript. We're using a technology called Weddy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it stands for WebTTY, and it's a web-based terminal. So it runs in your browser, you get a little terminal, and we've pushed Weddy beyond its capabilities. We're doing a lot of customization in Weddy. So that's kind of the glue we're using.
Is it like a game engine?
It's our own. So yes, it's a game
own
engine, but we wrote our own. Yeah.
Okay.
And so there's a thing that'll blow your mind. I may have mentioned this to you a few years ago on the show, but this is just, I mean, if you've ever done game development, I think this might blow your mind. So how do we control the game? I mean, are we going in and if you want Santa Claus to say something different, are we actually changing the code? Are we, you want to move Santa Claus over 2 blocks, or you want to put a light over here instead of over there? No, it is all done via one giant Google Sheet. An enormous Google Sheet. Whoa. Hundreds and hundreds of tabs. Let me give you this. Okay, so check this out. You want to draw a room in Holiday Hack Challenge. What you do is it's cells in a Google Sheet. You start drawing and making the cells a certain color. And then you want the spawn point of the character for that room. You make the cell a different color. You can then put JSON in other cells to put textures in those cells. So the rooms themselves, then the non-player characters, you put a certain color there. That means that's an NPC. You put in some indication of which NPC it is, and that is actually another tab. And then all of that character's dialogue is in that tab. So when you click on that character,
I feel like that's easier than like the Doom engine, like sprites and all that kind of stuff.
It is.
Right?
This is genius level stuff that Evan Booth came up with. So that way, if we need to change like what Santa Claus says,
Evan's methodical as hell.
It's unbelievable what Evan created. He's amazing. So if we want to change what Santa says, we just go and change a cell in a spreadsheet. Now we have to ingest that whole data structure, of course, and that puts it in the game. But this is all our own creation. I mean, it's
and it's not a database, right? Because we're not working with a business.
It's a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's a spreadsheet. Like the entire universe is a spreadsheet, right?
That's
I mean,
amazing.
LLMs are simply just giant weighted spreadsheets.
Right,
so it is a spreadsheet. And we're proud of that. I mean, it's really pretty cool. Now, there's a database for like accounts and stuff, but the actual video game world itself is controlled via a very complex spreadsheet.
That's awesome. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I keep in my back of my head. With this. There's a repeated theme here. Do you invent the space pen, or you just use a pencil?
Right. Actually, a pencil is wrong. That's actually not a good analogy. Graphite shavings are electrically conductive. They did not use pencils in space.
I just was trying for an easy analogy.
I'm sorry. I'm being pedantic.
I mean, the team
is the best kind of pedantic, though.
You're just being you, Josh.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's okay,
on.
Josh.
Jeff, I take after the best, right?
Right.
It's a relatively small team. So what we try to do is use pencils where we can, use space pens and build space pens where we need to use the analogy and push it beyond its edge. But we do a tremendous amount of automation, a tremendous amount of AI integration with our workflows to be able to achieve the scale of what we have with, the team that we've got.
So what you're saying is you have an SDLC with unit test. I mean, this for all intents and purposes, this is an application that we would manage like any other application.
It is. It's a big, complex application. Made by some really incredible individuals. I mean, the folks on my team, Jared Folkens, he does all of our DevOps stuff. Evan does the video game world. And then, of course, there's all the challenge developers working so hard. And then
there's multimedia folks, too, right? For graphics music.
I was just going to ask the music.
Yeah.
The music. Yeah. We've got some great stuff for the music this year. So new album of music, Count Ninjala. So right now, if you go, you've got Prologue, which has one song in it. Sweet Home Arctic Circle. Just saying. Okay. Because they're going back to the Arctic Circle, right? Yeah. If you go to Act 2, we've got 3 songs for you there. One is it's sort of a variation of Whistle While You Work. Another one's called Taking Care of Christmas Every Day, right? So because the elves are working, right? And then the last one I think you guys are going to really love. It is the theme for this year's bad guy. And it's Christmas Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
Oh,
and and then there's going to be
done with Electric Sheep. All right.
Wait, Electric Sheep. That was a classic.
So close.
Yeah, wait. So Ed, given some of the themes for this music, does another Skoudis happen to be in this soundtrack again?
My son is. He's done several songs in the soundtrack. In fact, I think he's done 4 songs. And Count Ninjala, is going to do 5 songs.
Nice.
So In Act 1, that's Josh's song. Act 2, there's 2 Ninjala songs and 1 Josh song. Act 3 is another 2 Josh songs plus, I think, 2 or 3 Ninjala songs. And then Act 4, well, I'm sorry, that was prologue, Act 1 and Act 2.
Wait,
But
hold
Act
on.
3 is going to have a few more.
Josh, we're talking about your son.
My son, not Josh Wright. Josh
Right.
Skoudis. He's
Josh
23
Skoudis.
years old.
Because that's
loves
what.
music.
Wait.
That was a nice name your wife and you decided on, not a reference to a movie, much in the same vein as I have a son named Luke.
It is totally a reference to a movie. My wife denies this, but she's wrong.
Yeah,
I don't know about yours.
I'm in the same boat with Luke. Yep.
Yep. So we're going to have a
Right
bunch of new music. We haven't put it yet on Spotify and Apple Music and all the others because we're in this phased release cycle.
Yeah.
But I think we might push 2 half albums. When maybe Act 2 comes out, I'll release the music. You can hear it in game. I've been posting it in Discord because it's MP3 files. So
Nice.
Nice.
And there's something new that I noticed this year about some of the quote rules.
yes,
About talking about
It's a hacker challenge. They're air quotes rules.
but
But there are hard and fast rules that we've established before.
but-
Like, don't hack the game,
but-
please.
yeah,
talking
true.
about the challenges themselves. Like, what's the deal? Like, once prologue is the quote over, and that there's another release, that you can start doing blog posts and YouTube walkthroughs and that type of
Yes,
stuff.
absolutely. So once
Tell us about that.
Once we release the next phase, like on November 11th, we released Act 1.
Yep.
So that means when that goes up, people can release their answers for prologue. And
Very
we've
cool.
seen people post answers, do YouTube videos, live stream. And when we release Act 2, people will post their answers from Act 1. Because remember, it's all about the learning. So it used to be we had this rule where, hey, you can't post anything until January, so please don't. But that's not conducive to you sharing different ways. We want different modalities, different teachers teaching in different ways, different people who think in different ways and have different learning styles. Let's bring that all out there.
Ed, that's incredible, man. That's a great decision. That's incredible. Like
I'm
that's
glad you like it.
fantastic.
That's from the team. It's totally from the team.
Yeah, and Ed, that like the reason I wanted to ask that, like, this rings to some of the things that I always tell folks that want to break into the industry or trying to get for a job. I'm like, have a blog, have a YouTube channel,
Yes.
go put things there that you are describing how you accomplish this task, even if it's like something, even if it's the easy one, or if it's the hard one, or the one you'd never thought about, or it's something that someone has done 1,000 times before. The point that it is in your voice, it is in how you've described it, and maybe there's that one command in your thing that is missing from everybody else. That is that missing piece.
Yep, that is so wise. In fact, tomorrow I am going to have 2 sessions where I'm counseling some college students. For other colleges, not the Sands College. And then on Friday, I'm going to have a session with some of the Sands College students. I do find, I don't know about you folks, but I'm finding that, and I love this, this is a great thing. My Fridays are increasingly being focused on just mentoring folks. So, every Friday I'll have 2 or 3 or 4 hour-long sessions where it's just me talking to people and helping them and stuff like that. And that's a lot of fun, to be able to do that too. I've been very fortunate to be able to, not have to spend all my Friday earning $1. So instead I can work on mentoring things. I really enjoy it. But anyway, Larry, your point about that, put together a blog, post your ideas, your thoughts about whether it's Holiday Hack or something else.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to hire somebody, I'm looking for that kind of thing. What have you contributed to the community? How do you think? What is your voice? What do you know?
Nice.
It's a great way to express that.
Yep.
Good stuff. Cool.
That's awesome. Now you're inspiring me to just start posting about how I'm using LLMs today.
I think you should.
Absolutely,
because
because you know what, I'd learned something new, and like I had this conversation at work the other day that like they did something on an LLM. I'm like, wait, you can do that with an LLM?
Isn't that
Like,
awesome?
And it was our marketing people.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? You got to teach me how to do that.
Who knew? That is so cool.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one more thing that's new in Holiday Hack this year that I'd like to do.
It's your Steve Jobs moment, Ed. Take it away.
One
Gotta
more
put on a
thing.
black turtleneck.
So this year we do have a leaderboard. We haven't done that in the past, and I mean that's fine. A lot of CTFs do leaderboards, but we have cohorts. So it's self-service cohorts. So you could create your own cohort for like your friend group or within your company, and which it's very easy to create. You just go to the account and where you log in, username, password, that kind of stuff, and you can say join a cohort or create a cohort. If you click create a cohort, it asks you to name it. You name your cohort, and then it gives you a join code just for your cohort. You share that with all your friends. They go and click on join a cohort, give it the join code, and you get your own scoreboard that only your cohort can see. So that way you can kind of compete with each other and such within a given company. Yeah. I've actually had some calls with various companies. I can't name them, but there are some companies that are going to have between 200 and 1,000 people playing within their companies, which is it's kind of cool. Yeah, there's three such companies that I know of because I've met with them, and that's what they're going to do. And they're going to create.
You're responsible for how much productivity loss?
Devastating.
Yeah. He's not even going to touch the guy who rated Solitaire.
That's true. Yes, or Minesweeper. But you could do a cohort of 5 people. Or, you could do a cohort of,
2
Security Weekly folks or something. Yeah, cohort of 2. But I think the scoreboard combined with the cohort thing is going to add a unique element to the game. Now, of course, people are coming to me, can we have cohorts within our cohorts? So nested cohorts.
Can you do multiple cohorts? Like tiered cohorts?
You can only be in one cohort at a time.
Yep.
But you can join or leave if you'd like. That's totally fine. Oh, and when you're in a cohort, the whole rest of all the other players in the game disappear. So it's just you and your buddies in there, right? And then you can leave the cohort at any time and join back again later if you want to see all the other people and such. Next year, we'll work on cohorts within a cohort, nested cohorts, all that. This is just, let's get cohorts out the door, see if people like it. But from my discussions with folks, it seems that the thing that they like most of all these changes this year is the staggered release cycle. Because last year we dropped 24 challenges, a giant world that you have to explore with sailboats, and you got to run around and all this stuff all at once, December 5th. And people are like, this is mind blowing. Now it's like, hey, you take little bites week after week and building over time. So
Ed, how do people find the Holiday Hack Challenge and start digging into it?
Super easy. Go to sans.org/holiday hack, and there you can click play now. You can read about it. There's a little video for me. It's 6 minutes long that kind of tells you how to play. You can watch that if you want. Click play now, and that'll take you into creating an account. You register, and you play in the world. There's a Discord channel. We've got links within the game. We've got links on the Sans site to the Discord channel. We have what we call concierges that are there to help orient you if you're lost, don't know what to do. You just go in Discord and ask for help there. We want this to be really friendly for maximum participation. We want as many people as possible to experience this and play it. And it's all free, totally free. And it will be up all year too. So if somebody can't get to it during the holiday season, stop by in, March or July.
So it sounds like you got a lot of elbows working on this now.
Well, the Counterhack team is now 19 people. And we are working very hard to not grow. We're good, thank you. But yeah, so we're 19 people. But the development, it used to be very centered on June, July, August. To do what we're doing now, and at the scale that we're at, we are developing it throughout the year. I'm always working on it myself, but then to have the whole team, challenges were due, I think, September 8th this year, whereas in the past it's been November. So we had to bump that earlier. We're doing a lot more handoffs in challenge development. So this person might work on it for 2 or 3 weeks and then hands all their work off to another person to move the challenge forward. We haven't done that so much in the past. It's just been more of a big block of time. So the charts, the PERT charts and Gantt charts and such of putting this together have grown very much more complex with our earlier release cycle. It's the nature of things.
So to that, do you know what the theme is for next year?
I do. Santa told me. Yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting departure, especially
Santa-toa? Like Krakatoa, but for Santa. I must have misheard you.
We will see. No, it's going to be different next year. This year's, like I said, it's called Snowmageddon, and Act 2 things get pretty dicey, pretty fast. Next year's is going to start out like a big party. So
interesting. I like it. I like a good party.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ed, thank you to you and your team for making this available to the community free of charge, making it accessible to everyone, putting this effort to really just advance the security community. It's one of the greatest contributions, I think, to our community. And I love it. I love that you come on our show every year. I'm grateful for it. And grateful to you and your team for making this available to everyone. It's fantastic.
Well, I
Yeah,
really
seriously, this
appreciate
is
that.
really cool stuff.
You guys are wonderful friends. That means a lot to me. I'll pass that off to the whole team. I'm going to tell all of them tomorrow. And what you guys do for the community is amazing and very much a treasure. It's helped untold tens of thousands of people, including me. So thank you for what you all do. It's just great to see you again. Thanks for letting me wear this silly hat every year.
I love it.
And I do like to come on the show, not just for Holiday Hack. I'm
Yes.
usually on another once or twice a year. And
You were on to talk about your book.
that's
which
true,
is amazing.
yeah.
Not that long ago, so make sure you check out that. And
Thank you for saying that, because my publisher would have come after me if I didn't.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's like, oops.
Ed, quick plug for your book. Where can you find your book?
You find book anywhere fine books are sold. It's on cybersecurity ethics.
It's fantastic. Excellent. Ed,
All right.
thank you for coming back on Paul's Security Weekly. You're obviously welcome back anytime.
Thank you. I love you guys. Really do.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
And we're going to continue our security news discussion after discussing, of course, the Holiday Hack Challenge. Very excited for the community to start chewing on that.
Yep. But before that, Paul, and
Yeah.
you might have some announcements and so forth, but something about our show notes and so forth to remind folks to go look at those and all that stuff.
Another reminder. It's a great reminder, Larry, that you can find the show notes for this episode, securityweekly.com/PSW-851. And it's always the same format.
Yep. PSW dash
those listening
episode number
are all hackers in their own right. It can figure out that next week it'll be 852.
And last week was 850.
8, right?
Yep.
So you can go. And so the team.
And somebody
Larry
right now
and I-
is calculating when 900 is going to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, but what Larry and I and collectively all of us are trying to say is we put a lot of work into the show notes.
Yes.
You should go read those. Sometimes there's articles we don't cover.
Yep.
You get
the articles that we do cover, like if that
Yeah,
this
if you
is
wanna
our
go
this
read
is our
them.
source material for where we've developed these stories. So
right. But like go read them and give us feedback too. Like if you read the article and had a different opinion, or you want to be like, I think you guys got that totally wrong. I want to hear your feedback, right? I'd love to
Absolutely.
hear your
Love that.
feedback.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep,
So-
absolutely. The other one too that I want to mention, because we're going to be that guy or that woman or we're going to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like and subscribe. Subscribe.
Yeah, please do.
Smash.
Go on your
Yeah,
I mean,
smash it.
for
favorite podcast catcher. Go like, subscribe,
YouTube,
leave
whatever.
us- leave us-
yeah.
I've been using YouTube a little more, not yet for podcasts, but I have been dabbling with YouTube music and really liking it. Someone actually writes, or a team of people make an open source client for YouTube music that runs on Linux.
Nice.
And it
So
worked
I have a silly
great.
question. Where should people give us feedback these days?
Yeah, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, because there's no more Google Podcast. It's YouTube podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think.
Honestly, I just think
Do
everybody-
any of us look at our Discord channel anymore?
Yep.
Okay.
We do.
Yep. Discord is also a great option there. Too.
Tag us in there so we see it.
Yep.
Okay.
And
I'm Heavenson on Twitter or X or whatever. Follow me there, and I'll
Yeah,
give you. I'll give you
what about Blue
Paul's
Sky?
phone number. I'll give you Paul's phone number if you.
I'm sure many of us could find Paul's phone number, right? Or you could go to my website, securitypodcaster.com. Up in the upper right-hand corner, there's all my social media links. I got to update that because I think I'm on Blue Sky. Might be the new one that I'm on that I haven't put there yet. But I'm on LinkedIn.
I verified I was on Blue Sky again today, that I had actually created an account, and I have exactly 0 followers. So
I'm on Mastodon, Instagram, Facebook, the whole thing. They're all the social media things are there.
nice.
And I will get back to posting. I know over the course of the year, I've been posting a lot of tech memes, security memes. I'm mixing up a little bit. I'm going to come back and start doing regular posting very soon. And so, but I want to mix up the content a little bit. So I've been brainstorming some ideas. If there's things you want to see in my social media, by all means, contact me.
Ooh, I have one other question thing out there too. Given what I do for a day job, Paul, and we have some really awesome stuff that we work on and you guys work on too. I am very much on the hunt currently for at least initially some folks that are into IoT pen testing,
Sure.
and sort of the whole IoT ecosystem type of folks. specifically, at least initially, for some 1099 contract work. So if you're really good at this type of stuff, we'd love to have a chat. And
That's why you were asking me for that thing,
and
right? Gotcha.
opportunity for potential full-time hire in the near future. We're looking to potentially ramp up on some of that IoT pen test work and so forth. So
that's awesome.
If you've got some interested parties, I'd love to hear from you. Find me on one of those social platforms. Yes. Yes. Knowing the projects that we've got coming. Yes.
I don't pretend to be a political expert in any shape, form, or fashion, or any stretch of the imagination. However, in talking with my peers and following cybersecurity news,
you also realize that none of them are political experts either.
I should qualify that geopolitical in context.
Okay.
China's relationship with Taiwan specifically.
So, man,
how that ties. But first of all, how that ties into what we're seeing. We can have a larger discussion. I'm scheduled to do another podcast for Below the Surface for Eclipsium and dig into that with my good friend Josh Corman, hopefully next week. But and Josh and I have had conversations about that, as well as some of my other peers, about like what that means specifically, not just for us as a nation, but us in cybersecurity specifically, in China's motivation, from what I understand, in wanting to take back over Taiwan. That Taiwan operates with some level of independence today.
Pseudo-British independence.
That's the way I understand it too, Larry.
Yeah.
And again, I don't pretend.
Same.
Well, they have a democratically elected president, right? So keep that in mind.
Right.
So,
I wasn't sure how far Taiwan was from China on some of those political fronts, Bill.
They're a democratic country, and they're one of our allies, right? And so,
but how separate is Taiwan from China?
So it
today
depends on
about
who
that
you ask.
much.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask China,
sure,
right? If you're asking a Chinese government person, they believe that Taiwan is part of their country already. However, Taiwan is fiercely independent, right? They would say that, and it's actually pretty. It's a lot
Texas.
More, yeah, Texas.
Okay.
That's actually,
similar.
So that Jeff is exactly right. So and what's interesting is, generally speaking, the Taiwanese people, like people in Taiwan, don't see China as a major threat, right? So they do understand, right? They understand the threat, but it's kind of, Texas is a really, really good analogy, I would say, right? So
thank you for your input on that, folks.
Yep.
But
and to understand a little bit more about that, and I couldn't begin to tell you where to find it, but Bunny Huang. If I remember correctly,
good buddy.
Was doing a lot of electronics manufacturing and sourcing of parts, and was very much back and forth a number of years ago, pre-COVID, between China and Taiwan, and there were all sorts of various restrictions that he had to do. And it was
also, I want to say, when I listened to interviews with the person who created the bus pirate, Ian. His name's Ian. Very similar story. Back and forth, I believe, to Taiwan. Touring the factories, the whole thing.
To get into one country, to going the other way was more difficult in one direction, and then it was more difficult in the other direction to get components, and there was all sorts of weird oddities. And
that was an amazing. Thank you, guys. That was an amazing setup for my story number 19. I'm glad we kind of set the stage for that.
Nice.
Because of what I started reading.
I assumed you were going somewhere with this, Paul.
Yeah, so my story number 19 is something that I've been reading in my feeds, and it's ironic because some of my feeds, and again, no affiliation, they don't sponsor the show, but I use Feedly. I think they're a great company. I like their product. I use it, but again, they don't sponsor the show. So I'm saying that of my own free will. But I configure queries to look through the cybersecurity news, and I have queries for 0 days. And I've seen this reference to a drama called 0 Day, which, not to be confused with 0 Days, which was the documentary about the NSA group that did Stuxnet. That was the Stuxnet one, right?
Yeah.
But 0 Day is
total conjecture.
Yeah, but the 0 Day is a drama depicting Taiwan's invasion of Taiwan, I believe produced by Taiwanese film companies, almost like predicting what would happen if China were to invade, or like the events that would precede an invasion of Taiwan from China, which many experts I talk to believe this is on the horizon at some point. There's some I forget what it is, but there's some like trigger that happens in 2027, right? That makes it more likely that China will do that. I forget, something is expiring. Does anyone know what the thing is that's expiring, or something in 2027?
It's
which kind of
something to do with a treaty, and it was signed probably 30, 40, 50 years ago, which means it was in my lifetime. And in theory, I remember it.
Gotcha. But so I feel like the producers had a time machine as to what's going to happen, right? Because like everything when I talk to people that know more about this subject than I do, they're like, something's going to go down. Like this is going to be a central point to not just geopolitics, but very heavily involved with cybersecurity today. And I think we're seeing evidence of that as I spend a lot of my day job investigating the Volt Typhoon and similar campaigns from Chinese threat actors, and observing what they're doing. Not that I'm personally observing, but I'm reading what others are producing reports that they've observed. And I'm like, man, like China's really taking an interest in IoT and network appliances and data collection and using our infrastructure to accomplish their goals. And then you've got this whole China-Taiwan thing into play, and there's a lot of intricacies here that I thought it was interesting. There's this film, and I really want to watch the film.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not sure how, like, is it accessible? I'm not sure how accessible it is. Like, we got to be able to find a copy to watch. I think it's like a short film, right? From my understanding.
I don't know.
It's getting, there's a lot of controversy over it, obviously.
Well,
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, so last week I was on, out and doing work for a Taiwanese company, and I brought up this issue, China versus Taiwan, and what became very, very clear to me, I'm working with some very, very smart people there. I was more concerned about it than they were.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Which was really interesting, so. But and we got into discussion and we talked about it, and like, hey, as American politics shift this way or whatever, how does that
what are the implications? Yeah. And
like,
no one knows. No one has a
no
crystal
one
ball
knows,
that can predict. Right.
But I was more concerned about it than they were, I could tell. So
No, I mean, for them, like, what is the shikata there's nothing that can be done about it. It's going to happen or it's not going to happen,
right?
From their perspective. But from our perspective, geopolitically, it might be a little different in that, if they're our allies and we need to go stand up for our allies, then that puts us in a really interesting spot.
Yeah, in a geopolitical sense, it puts us in a sticky. I had a conversation about that today. It's a sticky position that it puts us in.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is, there's nothing that can be done, Larry. It's that, hey man, I'm not too worried about it. Like, Texas talks about like what like becoming the whole country. Like, I mean, yeah, you're running your mouth about it, but I mean, is it ever going to happen? I mean, maybe, but I'm not worried about it.
You're not worried about it. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I think from a cybersecurity perspective, this is an interesting thing to follow and keep tabs on. Like, I want to actually consume the media that they're talking about here, right? An upcoming 10-episode Taiwan TV series is the first drama to depict a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Like, to me, that's really interesting because it has so many ties back to what we do in cybersecurity today.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Paul. If you think about it, that like, if there's going to be an invasion and any of those types of things, or there's going to be some sort of military action, like there's military action in various places of the planet, that cyber, and I'm going to kick myself in the nuts for using that, like cyber is a part of those actions now, and it is very much a part of the reality. So there is definitely some bearing on what we see. Like, will China go burn 0 days against Taiwan should they choose to invade? And what does that really mean?
More so, I think the discussions that are happening today, and some of those have happened in public forums by certain congressional leaders, is what is China's interaction with its foes and allies to support and or make that invasion more plausible? Like it's like a chess game right now, right? Like, oh, is the US going to get involved? Oh, really? Like, we may launch attacks against the US, maybe a diversion, it maybe not, maybe a direct attack to be like, no, we're taking back over Taiwan. And then, like, long term, what implications does that have? More so than just our self-serving as nerd implications of, I want to order electronics from China to do my, silly little hacking projects, which is like, that's my personal thing, right? Like, I think a lot of us like to vote and or assert whatever political influence we have that is self-serving to us, right? That maybe just like in our world, that's what's important to us, but not necessarily populations at large. For us, man, I love going on AliExpress. And I love ordering,
man.
like we've talked about this in the show. Like I love the accessibility and low price of just being able to tinker with stuff, right? And even if that stuff is on a US site like Amazon, and I'm like, I know this is like a, cheaply is the wrong term, low cost, maybe it is cheap, right? Low
Cheap
cost
right.
thing that I know. Yeah, cheap was right? Cheap thing that I'm like, oh, maybe I can find some cool stuff. Like maybe there's some malware in there that I can analyze or whatever, right? Like, to us, that stuff is fun. Also, a means to an end of like, what's the threat? Do we need to evangelize this threat so to help squelch that threat? Right. So there's a lot of factors at play I think are really interesting in this thing. We're just gonna have to see how it plays out. Hopefully, favorably for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like it's crazy shit happening. But I do, because it's the story right underneath it in the show notes. I want to talk about it's kind of a really funny thing that gets into like a more serious thing in my story number 20, where Linus Torvalds has a new patch, and it says a small chain with big implications for Linux security. Now, I want to read this article. Sam, do you have to run, or can you stick around for this article?
He's got to run.
You got to run.
No, I'm okay.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I definitely. He's like
run.
standing up, ready to go. He's like,
waving.
good.
Have the
I'm
runs?
good. Yeah,
Is that
he's
the
like, I'm good.
No, that was Josh.
He's just stretching. You're good, Sam. I love you, man. Appreciate you.
No, Josh was the one that had the runs.
So I just want to read a little bit about this article because you could get lost really easily, but I'm going to bring it back to reality. So there's a recent patch that aims to improve Linux performance by changing how the kernel handles copying operations from user space. And like, from what I've read and listened to about operating system performance, a lot of it centers around translating user space operations into like more ring zero kernel level operations. A lot of the performance, impacts that we see like can go either way in this translation from user space calls into kernel space. So
kind of sounds like automation at some level.
Not really. It's more accessing facilities to
more efficiently
improve. Like, hey, I need access to this resource, so I'm going to access the kernel. How does the kernel handle that so that it's both performant and secure? And this is exactly this juncture. So there's an API in the kernel via a function call called barrier no spec. So this API was designed to thwart speculative execution attacks such as Meltdown Inspector, first made public in 2018. I think that timeline is very important. Modern CPUs use speculative execution to increase efficiency, right? Predict maybe what instruction would come next so that I can preload that and have it be more performant. However, it also exposes security vulnerabilities, as we've seen with speculative classes, dozens of bugs that Spectre and Meltdown are the poster childs, lots of different bugs in speculative execution. Modern CPUs use speculative execution, however, it can also expose it. Torvalds' patch replaces barrier no spec, which is one of the kernel basically APIs, with pointer masking. Mm-hmm. This method returns all ones when the copy from user attempts to access an invalid address. I kind of read that as like, if I'm trying to take advantage of speculative execution to execute code, it's basically just going to return all ones and not allow me to like gain access to those other kinds of functions. So, and that could be wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a kernel expert by any stretch of the imagination. So it says this approach offers a measurable performance boost while maintaining security. So this is a very small patch that's supposed to have this great performance and security impact. However, I think this is neat, but I've yet to see any evidence of Spectre meltdown or any speculative execution style attacks being exploited in the wild. The first attacks, if we're dating back 6 years, that's a long time where I've not seen any evidence of this being. And I ask frequently, not just like I don't ask Google. I ask Google. I ask LLMs. I ask my peers. I ask people who are doing threat and vulnerability research, and everyone has the same answer, whether it's an automated LLM or whether it's an actual person working in the field. Like, no, not really seeing it, right? Which I think it's kind of interesting.
But now I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that. Just because you're not seeing it doesn't mean it isn't happening.
Dude, like 1,000%,
That's not exactly a monkey wrench, Larry.
But hold on, no. But Larry brings up a great point. Jeff, hold on, Jeff. Hold on, Jeff.
If a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound?
Jeff, relax. Larry is spot on because Larry is ironically predicting my next statement. In that, could it be that we're not seeing it because it's a difficult attack to detect? Right? We don't have the appropriate detections in place.
Could it be that we're not seeing it because there hasn't been a CVE issued?
But Jeff, it's a valid point. It's a valid
circle.
Point. I don't think there's data to support any of these hypotheses. Are we not
is
seeing
there a patch?
Are we not seeing it because attackers aren't doing it, or are we not seeing it because attackers are using it, but our visibility and technology to detect that attack hasn't evolved such that we could detect it if it was happening in the wild? I don't see evidence that would support either thing, but we come back to we're just not seeing it. Now, what's interesting, I just want to point this out, and this is normally not my take on any particular vulnerability or threat that is out there. The Register, LReg, says defending these attacks is a necessary evil. Running web servers and the like is a primary usage of Linux, and such boxes must be locked down against every conceivable attack, even at the cost of disabling performance-enhancing features. I completely disagree with that statement, like wholeheartedly.
I agree. I agree with it until you got to the very end.
You need cost of disabling performance-enhancing features, right? Yeah.
You need to defend against all possible attacks.
So, but if I dig into this issue, like again, and I've done research on this issue, I published blogs for my day job on this issue, and I looked at it again, and again, when I dig into the research and have it regurgitate back to me in an LLM, they say the same thing that I've researched manually and asked people about. Exploits in a lab struggle to be reliable and are very slow at extracting data from memory that are exploiting speculative execution vulnerabilities.
You made Sam stick around. Let's hear from
for the record,
Sam language model.
After all that, they're like, I'm tired. I need a break. I need to sip my whiskey. What do you think?
The Sam language model.
I can't claim to be an expert here, but I think the point is there have been mitigations at the firmware already, even at high performance cost, and that's why you haven't seen the attacks. I don't think you can voluntarily run a system that is known to be vulnerable at this level because it subverts the whole security model. It lets you see into the protected parts of memory. It lets you, it just seems, I think the Register is correct. You couldn't really run a system with a hole like this that you know is not patched.
I don't know.
That sounds like a challenge to me.
I don't know, man.
It would be so hard to explain to management if you got hacked that, I left this hole open to get an extra 2% performance. That's why I think Linus is really on target.
But I don't think it's 2%. I think it's more like 30 or 40% from what I've read.
Right. It has been, and therefore the huge advance here is Linus has found a more efficient defense that doesn't slow it down.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. However, I will stand my ground that I still have yet to find definitive evidence that attackers are exploiting this particular vulnerability class.
Well, I think it's very difficult, and it keeps changing with the mitigation. So until it settles down, the attackers don't have time to develop an attack. But if we stop patching it, they will have time to develop an attack.
Right.
Lee's got a comment in there.
So there was a couple things. There were CVEs that went with Spectre, and I haven't found the ones for Meltdown. I stopped searching.
So you didn't use AI.
Yeah, there's
I'm
probably
old.
no, but Lee, you're on the right track. There's probably I've tracked
and there were patches
about a
from
dozen
Microsoft that
about a
included
dozen different attacks that probably relate to 15, maybe 20 CVEs in this
Right.
class of
So,
attacks.
But you talk about the the thread I wanted to pull was the performance impacting patches, which really comes to a risk-based decision, which is I think where Paul's at. And in the case, well, we were all and where I work, we were all in a mandated to throw out the Spectre and Meltdown fixes. With one exception, the fixes were so performance hitting that we got exceptions for high performance computing because they failed to be high performance computing with that. And there are, by the way, there are a ton of mitigations in HPC. This is not your buddy's Linux computer that made it.
And but HPC, high performance computing, what I'm learning kind of changed my view on that. It's largely Linux now.
Yes, we used.
When I looked at HP took over Cray.
Yeah,
Crays are Linux-based systems today.
Now they are, yeah,
right, which is crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and, go ahead, Lee.
I would say when I first encountered Crays, they actually ran an OS we wrote ourselves in Livermore.
Yeah, like Cray was its own company with its own operating system. Is that truly?
When I first encountered Cray, it ran operating systems written by where I worked too.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
That's crazy.
And
you talk about
TOSS and NLTOS were our versions.
And you talk about little bits of a performance. And I didn't have this story in the show notes, just as a little bit of a tangent. I was watching the DEF CON talk about some folks that were interacting with, I want to say it was MCAS for airplanes, and trying to spoof and or inject their own MCAS stuff to put planes in radar range and all this type of stuff, so you could attempt effectively putting new planes on your dashboard, so that, oh my god, another system that an aircraft uses to alter autopilot stuff and potentially crash planes. They couldn't generate, using software-defined radio, they couldn't generate the signals with the fast enough pulse width because their computers, the fastest computer that they could get a hold of, was too slow. So they had to disable a whole bunch of stuff, including a bunch of security measures and all this stuff, and had to remove their GPUs because the GPU processing was taking up so many cycles from the processor that it couldn't generate the signal fast enough. So
that's
crazy stuff. Yeah. They got it fast enough. It only took them 2 months to solve.
That'd be a hell of a tech talk.
You said we had some stories that were in. I'm trying to now go through and see where we had some commonalities.
And we've got one a little bit later on that Josh wanted to talk about that required some more time, but I think we still should.
I think we should go to, while it's up on my screen, Mazda in-vehicle infotainment systems is a great place to go right now.
Yes, it is.
Oh crap! This is amazing. Car hacking at its finest. I love that there was, just to preface this story, I love that before the ZDI Zero Day Initiative disclosed these vulnerabilities, they disclosed right at the top of their article that there was a thriving hacking community that was hacking the infotainment systems on Mazdas. I love, from a pure hacking standpoint, I just love that.
Yeah. And for the record, this is your story number 8, which is also potentially tied to your story number 18 as well.
Correct.
600 infotainment bugs allow Mazdas to be hacked with USBs.
Yep. I just also, the way that they hacked these was, from what I understand, OS command injection vulnerabilities that were based on the file names on a USB drive that you plug into the infotainment system.
I thought it wasn't. I thought it was the USB drive name itself.
All the attacker needs to do is create a file on a FAT32 formatted USB mass storage device where the name will contain the OS commands to be executed, provided the file name ends in .up for it to be recognized by the software update handling the code.
Gotcha.
That was kind of the crux. That was like, of all, they disclosed a bunch of vulnerabilities, but like this was like, if you want to hack your Mazda, this is the one to pay attention to. Right?
And
Which
the
kind of is
killer-
indicative of how do I modify my enhance my Mazda infotainment system. Is there's some people on some Mazda hacking forums that were like, hey, like I figured out if you like put a file on a USB drive named this, you can totally modify it so you can get around any limitations the manufacturer put in, which is hacking at its finest, right?
Yep.
Like making something do something it's not supposed to do.
So
It's
big,
right
you
back
know,
to the roots of hacking.
So
Yeah.
I have a question. FAT32, we're still using that? That's still out there?
Yeah. Oh, big time.
That's 20-some odd years old,
I know,
isn't it?
it's amazing, Jeff, as I've looked
25 years old.
Yeah, like so many different hacking platforms, embedded, like ESP32,
embedded IoT. That is typically the
Yeah.
and even consumer electronic type of stuff. Like we have some security cameras here in the studio, and those security cameras you can put a micro SD card into to record video locally. FAT32 format.
FAT32. Sometimes FAT16. Like sometimes you have to go back. Sometimes you have to use older file formats.
I haven't seen a
Jeff.
16 in a while, but most of the time it's FAT32.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
And now, is that because IoT systems don't need anything more than 60? They don't need more
it's
than
like
32-bit. It's just
It's to save room on the,
simplistic.
I think, Jeff, to your question is to save room in the firmware, right? Like what's the minimal file format I need to support? Bill, I know you mess with this stuff too, right? You've been in this situation where you're like, oh, I need to go reformat this, or I've had to create a smaller partition on a larger storage device just to have it support my device, which like cost wise, I'm like, oh, I can go buy really cheap mass storage devices like SD cards because it literally you have to like downsize your partition.
And more importantly, I probably have a whole crap load of those in the drawer somewhere.
Yeah. Sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, I was kind of going back to the hacking your Mazda Entertainment Center. So I've been a part of this like kind of community for a while with a lot of my cars, and it's pretty interesting. A lot of the things that you can do just with the entertainment system. So like right from the bat, like and most auto manufacturers right now, like most, if there was a level above yours, right? So like if you bought the premium and there was a prestige, and part of that was Apple AirPlay or CarPlay or whatever. Those are just it's literally just a flip of a bit on those entertainment systems. All the hardware is there. You can just enable it.
Yep, all the hardware and software is there. It's just a feature flag.
Yep.
But some of the other cool stuff that you can do, which I would never suggest anybody do, but it's awesome when you do, is like, like enabling video in motion. So you can, you've got this giant iPad in the screen of your car now, but when you drive, it turns the video off, right? Well, you can turn that off, right? And
so I can watch a movie while I'm driving.
That's absolutely.
I want to watch Endgame while I'm driving to my destination.
And
sure.
And then what gets even wilder is a lot of those entertainment systems are have access to all the sensors of the car. You can get in and get like your CAN bus data. You can get like GPS stuff. You can get
low speed CAN bus.
You can get into just the cellular side of if your car is always connected or whatever. It's fantastic, and it's a really interesting. It's a
cars
really,
are just
really
computer with wheels, man. I know some of my Tesla, like going from different vehicles where I would scroll on like an Android Auto, and if you scroll too much, it's like, well, no, you should be driving. Like, knock that off. Tesla's kind of weird in that it doesn't care. It's like, oh, you can scroll as much as you want and do whatever you want, to the point where I'm the filter where I'm like, I have to tell my passenger, like,
Here, do this.
If you want to do that, like you need to go do that. Like I gotta
when
focus
you-
on the road.
When you have
right?
that moment where you're like, man, I haven't looked on the road in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, dude, it's scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what lane
scary.
that's what lane assist is for. It's
I
fine.
Oh no,
Collision
like
alert.
dude, don't lose it. I did that this morning on my way to the studio. I like literally my center console thing that I have on my floor of my truck was sliding while I had like a cup of coffee and
Right,
like an
yeah.
iced tea can
Yeah.
that was like rattling while I'm smoking a cigar, and I'm like,
And you,
oh shit, like I literally pulled out from a stop sign and I was like, I had to wave to the lady. I'm like, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to cut you off, like I had too much shit
Yep.
going on, and it wasn't even through the
And-
electronic, like there was just too much shit going on in Paul's car, like at that moment, and,
And-
like
and you were-
after that you're like, fucking now I need to just focus on the road.
Yeah.
Like,
and
holy shit.
you weren't even driving the millennial anti-theft device.
Yeah, dude, I wasn't even driving the Tesla, I was driving my truck.
No, you weren't driving stick.
No, it was an automatic. Yeah, it was an automatic at that. No, like but I also think when you drive a stick shift manual transmission, like it puts you in a different mode when you're like, I can't even do it.
Well, I mean, those are all the memes that I've been seeing lately. Is like, yeah, you drive manual so you don't get distracted, and people have got like the phone tucked in there and they're smoking a cigarette and eating a donut and driving manual at the same
dude.
time. And
that's why
Yeah.
I didn't like my manual transmission, because like to be able to drive that and have a coffee and a cigar was like impossible. I
Yeah.
like, holy crap,
It's-
you can't, like you just can't.
that's like my
Just get a shift.
That's like my 50th birthday present. Like, you need to focus when
You
you,
need to
drive
focus.
that. You
Yeah.
cannot.
Dude, I
yeah.
can't wait, Larry. I want to drive that thing so bad.
No.
I want it so bad. So speaking of distracted driving and hacking, we got to talk about the Spotify car thing, right? So
Yeah,
that-
what? So what? This is like
What's this?
this is a strange device.
Oh,
Like,
oh.
But like, I still want one. Like, what is it?
Whose story? Whose story?
Right?
What now
It's
is
my
this on?
story.
Several of
Okay,
Number
the
13.
Spotify car thing. Yes.
It literally. This wasn't my name for it. Ars Technica said Spotify car thing
That's what it's
due
called.
for bricking is getting an open source second life.
Yeah, well, that's what Spotify calls it. Their device is called the car thing.
okay.
So-
So Spotify has lost all enthusiasm for a little music devices it sold for just half a year.
It was
Firmware
only
hackers
$100. It was $100.
That would be
when it
6
came out.
months for those following along at home.
Yep.
Right.
For those
So-
overseas.
But they say firmware hackers, as usual happens, have a lot more interest in, have stepped in to save, upgrade, and potentially useful gadget. So
what
this
this-
is like a. Go ahead.
What this device was is Spotify came up with this very creative idea and said, for those people that don't have CarPlay or Android Auto, or and like here is
Which a lot of people. There's a lot of old cars on the road.
for sure.
Yep.
Here's a very easy way, and actually a very good looking, cheap. At the
Yep.
time at retail it was $100 device that would let you.
It looks like that espressive thing that has the screen with the dock that they
Yeah,
came
but
out
it's
with.
also
What is
got
it?
like that turn dial that's cool. So
Oh
like,
yeah, dials.
yeah.
are
Imagine,
yep,
Paul, if you had to like replace your car every 3 years because it went end of life.
I know, right? But yeah, it's a valid point, right?
But what
When we
this,
talk
what
about
this
end of life
allowed
gear,
you to
Jeff.
do
Yep.
was to bring Spotify into your car, right? And
Right.
and it only accessed Spotify, and it only streamed Spotify. And what they've done is Spotify then said they end of lifed it, Jeff. So it's done. And what they're going to do, and their plan was
it only Spotify because they broadcast on a specific frequency?
I
No,
don't-
it's like software on the device. It was like you
Yeah.
can only do Spotify.
Yeah, it was a Spotify device made by Spotify to do Spotify things, so that when you were using this device, Spotify could track how you listen to music and what type of music you listen to and what type of things you accessed while in the car.
yeah.
Because arguably they couldn't, if you were using the Spotify app on your phone, couldn't tell whether you were in the car or you were at the gym or you were on an
Yeah,
airplane.
because Spotify will only run on certain device. I can't imagine they didn't collect that. The problem I have with Spotify is if you don't, my wife gets in the Tesla
Yeah.
and uses Spotify, which just
Me
had
too.
to my
Yeah,
account,
me
and
too.
like my
And it
wife is like,
screws up your predictions. And
Mhm.
yeah,
and
but my wife
algorithm.
is like, I don't want to switch to my Spotify account in the Tesla. I don't, and I'm
Yep.
lazy, and I'm like, I don't want to figure out how we'd like change profiles in Spotify in the Tesla. Like I haven't gotten there yet, like, because just time, right? So I'll be at work listening to Spotify, but my wife is driving to work,
Yep.
gets in the Tesla, starts listening to Spotify, and my music goes away. So much so, I've gotten so frustrated with it,
Fart
and
sounds.
for two
Fart
reasons.
sounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do that all the time.
frustrated with that process of my Spotify listening going away because my account, I haven't created the appropriate account separation, and two, frustrated with Spotify that it always plays the same kind of music. Like I've been a big Spotify user for probably 10 years,
Same.
and I'm just like frustrated with the algorithm. Like it just plays the same music now. And so in the past week, interesting how it ties into this, I'm like, I want to do YouTube music. I'm like, I'm going to pay for YouTube Music Premium, $10 a month. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I just need something different. Like I just need like a different infusion of stuff. I'm on the hunt for something that can take your Spotify playlist and import them into YouTube Music. If anyone knows how to do that, I will literally send you like limited edition Security Weekly gear that Larry and I have salvaged in exchange for like how you do that.
I might have something for you. Remind me that tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
I might have something for that.
Well, so anyway, Spotify's the way that they handled the end of life of this device was just to brick it. So that's how when they end of life.
That's the wrong answer, though.
They just bricked it, and so like about it's been kind of like a lot of people in the hardware hacking community.
Yeah, then it's a challenge, right? Then all of us know, like then it's a game on.
Because I mean, honestly, if you go and look at it, it's a pretty attractive piece of hardware. It's a screen. It's small. It's got a screen. It's got a dial. It's
not very performant though. I think it uses an A-Speed processor, which is also A-Speed makes processors for BMCs, which are very highly special purpose kind of things. Not super powerful.
But how much processor do you need to play back your playlist?
To play back music, it's a great point, Lee.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you want to control the music you listen to, Paul, you just switch out the 8-track. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. I was going to say like a
stuff.
CD player, like you just swap the CD out.
Yeah, I just went 20 years older than CD. That's all.
I didn't have 8-tracks. I had cassette tapes in my cars. I had cassettes. And the CD changers in the trunk was the really.
Did you get the
if
junk?
you were cool, you had the CD changer in the trunk. Yep. You load 20 CDs and
the
CD
jukebox. What did they call it? The
Yeah.
jukebox in the trunk. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I sent you something in Slack and the PSW channel.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, you got the old junk in the
But
trunk.
you guys probably like rate your movies so that YouTube and Netflix and all those things will give you what you want to watch, right? I resist
there's recommend.
I do.
There's recommendations and there's ratings, and there's also analytics based on what you've watched or listened to before.
I get ratings fatigue because every app that I use asks me to rate my experience to a point where I'm like, nope, I don't have time for that. I'm like, I'm not going to be your guinea
What's
pig.
the rating for this?
Yeah,
1.
But it's not even that I've had bad service. It's they just constantly ask like Uber and DoorDash and whatever servers that in that vein. It's like you need to rate your experience. I'm like, no, I logged in because I'm going to place my next order. My previous order was fine. I'm not going to rate it. The only time I rate it is if you have a bad experience, which I guess is not a bad thing. If people are only rating their bad experiences, I get fatigue with the ratings experience. I like with music and with consuming movies and TV shows that it just kind of automatically recommends things to me. Like I want to consume the content I'm going to consume, and then you're going to recommend to me based on what you watched. I'm going to recommend based on what you listened to. I'm going to recommend the next thing. I think that Spotify's DJ. Have you seen the Spotify DJ?
Yeah,
no,
it's terrible. I don't
it's
like it.
Awful.
It's
I think
terrible.
the concept is great.
Yeah, the concept's great, but man, that
what's
DJ
funny?
sucks.
You know what's funny, Bill? I know you have issues with Tesla.
Big time.
On the Spotify app,
big time.
Right? But so I'm going to give you some more fuel for your fire. The Spotify app on Tesla, it can't interpret the Spotify DJ. It's like it literally gives. I'll take a screenshot of it the next time I load it in my Tesla. It literally says like API response like unknown.
So
like it
sounds
doesn't know how to
yeah, that's
because it hasn't updated it. If I go to Android
I
Auto,
was going to say, you
it's
just
like,
need an
oh.
update.
yeah.
All right.
but I can't initiate that update. Tesla has to
Oh, wow.
make that update
Yeah.
to that app and then push it out to my car.
Mm.
But if I go on Android Auto and I go in Spotify, it's like, oh yeah, like DJ's kind of fun.
bringing us
In
ba-
the spirit of manual transmission, can we shift gears?
Hey,
well, I was going to say, I don't know if we never necessarily finished the Spotify thing, but on the shifting gears, I've got a tie into this particular conversation that would work
Oh,
nicely.
yeah. Let's do it, Larry.
Which was my story number 5. FYI, a warrant isn't needed. Secret Service says you agreed to be tracked with location data through the use of other apps. And this one was an interesting one, specifically in that, I hate that it's 404 Media and you need to go sign up to go read it.
I unfortunately didn't see the whole thing because of that.
Yeah,
let's table that for now.
Well, nope. Yeah, we'll table but the point being here is that the Secret Service is arguing that they're using a tool called LocateX, made by a company called Babel Street. And Babel Street has been involved in the intelligence community here in the U.S. for a long time, because effectively what Babel Street does is it consumes data from apps and websites, all that tracking data that these websites consume, that gather on you as an individual. They purchase it from these websites. The data brokers, they aggregate this data, and then they are effectively republishing aggregations of aggregations and tying all of this data together. And then they sell their services and this aggregation of data to various folks that want to use that, including government agencies.
Yeah. So
and the argument here is that these government agencies are saying, well, this is data that the user has agreed to be tracked and sold, and we just happen to buy it on the open market because it's available on the open market. It's not necessarily public data, but it is data that we don't need to get a warrant for because the user has given that away effectively for free as part of their licensing agreement, and we're just buying it like anybody else could.
And it also bypasses the restrictions on spying on American citizens as well, right? Because
yes, it does.
From a commercial, from a commercial.
Yes,
offering.
it does.
Yeah.
And this is
12333.
Yeah.
Jeff
being all quiet.
Yep.
Like,
I mean, for good reason, and I understand.
Yeah.
So this was one that had come up, and we talked about this a little bit too. And I'm looking at my phone here. This was very much some of the same stuff that came up with the book that I read, Means of Control by Byron Tao. Very like
this is cybersecurity canon that you're reading this for.
It was
leisure?
It was leisure
or both.
But both arguably.
Okay. Yeah.
But Means of Control by Byron Tao, it explained all of this type of stuff about all of this data aggregation and how the governments were leveraging this and the types of trouble they were getting into and saying they weren't going to do it. And
let's go through
and so
books
forth.
for a moment. Sorry, ADHD brain. But Cybersecurity Myths by
Spafford.
Yes.
Is that on the?
It's on the canon.
It's on the canon.
would
Already
be
on the
surprised.
canon. I listened
it's
to that when
already there.
I drove to New Jersey back and forth one day. Listened to that fantastic book. Spaff. We interviewed Spaff on that. And admittedly, I hadn't read the book before the interview. Spaff talked about it. I read the book or listened to it. Amazing. Everyone should listen to that book, hands down. Speaking of books, Bill, you said in Slack earlier, for those listeners, we have an internal Slack channel.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. But you said you wanted to talk about AI in the context of creating books, reading books. What is your take on this?
Well, but you're shifting on. Let's go back to Larry first, and then we'll talk AI and books.
I think. Go ahead, Jeff.
Because I was being silent, and Bill pointed it out. I wanted to say that the analogy going or the precedence is going back to the old days when there was U.S. mail, when people would actually write letters and send them in an envelope to an intended recipient. The contents of the outside of the envelope was considered public information. We could loosely consider that to be packet headers and not the payload.
Yeah.
And that's just extended on and on. I remember, gosh, 25, 30 years ago, the telecoms were starting when cell phones were becoming more of a thing. What was being captured and regularly shared with, let's just say, the government was, the twos and the froms, who's calling who and how long, and it wasn't they weren't recording the contents of the calls.
It
was
or
just
the SMS messages, and
it's just it's a slippery slope maybe, but it's a logical extension to argue that if you're signing up for these apps that are doing different things, that there's certain amounts of information that you're agreeing to share, and if
be
you're
sold.
agreeing to share with, well, I don't know if you agree to it be sold. It's just known that happens.
It's part of the EULA.
It's in the small print.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but there's private. We can go back to the Patriot Act, right, where much of the contention was not just the context of the call, but the three-letter government agency spying on you, air quotes, spying on U.S. citizens, but based on the call records. Who did you call, right? Inside and outside the U.S.
But that's my point, Paul.
Records.
The Patriot Act came about after 2001, 9/11.
Correct. Yep.
That was the time frame where it was very common for the telecoms. They were sort of routinely sharing, let's just say, header information.
Yeah.
The call, where it was coming from, who it was, the number that it was being placed to, how long was the conversation. It wasn't the capturing the content of the call, the payload.
It was just
data.
the call records. Yeah.
It was just for lack of a better term, the
but
header
that was
information.
But that tied
and
into
that's the
Snowden,
precedent.
But that's the
Absolutely.
Snowden leaks that was talking about the FISA courts. That was Snowden describes the situation where he's like looking over the person who has access to that data, right? I can see who called who for how long, and that's enough to maybe get more information, to maybe disclose enough information to warrant more investigation.
So
that's a thing. That's
anyway. AI books. I know that's much more fun to talk
before
about.
we go to AI books, the thing that's going through my head on
they are mocking you right now, Bill. I just want to point this out. I just want to point this out.
I'm not.
Bill is being mocked for AI books right now.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that.
Consider yourself mocked, Bill, but I don't have the energy to actually do it. So the thing that's going through my head with this is with the data brokers is earlier this year, there were several actions by the FTC against the data brokers for releasing the information, and the phrase they're using is informed consumer consent, not just consent, but informed. And that's a magic phrase there. And so I'm thinking that while in fact the base argument for this Secret Service may be okay, it doesn't align with what the FCC is doing. And there's a lot of uproar about.
So to bridge that and the AI book discussion, if you go into your Google settings, you have to opt out of Google using all of your information to feed their LLMs.
You have to opt out of a lot of stuff in Google.
Well, that's true part for
in the
course.
Browser, the whole thing.
But I've been up in arms because of Google doing that AI summary every time you do a Google search.
The Gemini summary in every Google search.
Speaking of AI summaries,
which is crap.
I came across this service that a buddy of mine used, and what he did was with a very small prompt, he created a book, and it was a hard copy book, like a hard copy that was shipped to him. And he asked the AI.
No, he didn't write it.
Right,
AI
well,
wrote it.
The
LLM wrote it.
The prompt that so Ted showed me this that kind of blew me away.
It was a TED talk.
It was a TED book.
It was a fictitious person named Ted.
Yeah, a real person named Ted. But so
a real person named Ted.
Yeah, his prompt was about how the difficulties of vulnerability management and kind of like an enterprise thing. And what got delivered to him was a 240-page book that if you were to just take it and just open it up to a page and read, read the book or, read that page, it made sense. And it absolutely, like, it was funny. it had his kind of like, I don't know if it was necessarily his voice, you know what I mean, but it had an author voice.
Unless you spend a lot of time contextualizing your voice with an LLM, it gets sort of.
Listen, like
it's like a dotted line. If I say to an LLM, describe this topic in the voice of Paul Asadorian and use the eclipsium.com/blog as the resource.
Well, I don't know what they were using on the back end though, but I'm just telling you.
So in my experience, Bill, it gets you the data that it spits back to me is about 75% of the way there,
and
which not bad, not
which
horrible.
is better than humans.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I wanted to throw that out there because I found it hilarious,
but I haven't prompted it to write a book. I haven't but I think I could. I think I could if I spent more time. I could. There is enough of Paul Asadorian's voice, right, that I could derive from transcripts. I could actually train a model to transcribe all what are 851 episodes of. I'd also have to have it pull out just my voice. It's not just my voice on all of those episodes, right? I have to tell it to like this is Paul's voice. There'd be some training involved with it, but if I said like write a book about it, I think it would still be 75. Bill, my thing is 75% of the way there.
I've seen services that get advertised me on the social networks that do the exact thing.
Well, that's probably where you got it.
You know? And you print the book, and like usually it's like you're giving a book to a friend that they allegedly wrote, and the title is like Vulnerability Management and Loose Stools. And
right. Well, so what was so funny about what Ted wanted?
Dude, that's totally. Like, can I take that title? That's totally my book. Like, if I would write a book on vulnerability management, it would be Paul Asadorian, Vulnerability Management and Loose Stools.
What's funny about this? All he wanted a book that had his name on it that he could put on a bookshelf. You know, you kind of just like, hey, sitting at a desk, like, oh, you've written a book. So we're running out of time, and I really want to cover my story number 2, the Hunting Exchange and Research Threat Hub.
That's total misdirection. I thought you just only wanted to.
I want to really cover Larry's number 1 story because it ties into a couple of my stories.
All right.
We're gonna go to Bill.
You want to take a number 2? Go ahead.
I want to take a number 2.
Number 2 and Loose Stools. Go.
So
Bill, take a number 2.
So I'll go real quick. So this is a new project.
We heard that about you.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
Go, Bill, go.
This is a new project released by a SecKC member. I think everybody here on the panel's probably met her. Her name's her. Well, I was going to call her by her real name, like so.
Don't do that.
So Tri-Wolf is her nick. But so what this is a new kind of like a MITRE ATT&CK framework for threat hunting, right? So one of the things that she's really focused in on very, very large scale threat hunting. And one of the things that she found was, coming up with the scenarios that you're going to hunt for, man, you get going really, really quick, right? So I want to search for this and I want to search for this, and then you run out of ideas, right? Like, what should I be hunting for? So she's created this new hub, and it just launched. It just launched right now, and it's called Hearth, 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 and it's on GitHub.
Yep, that's how you spell Hearth.
Yeah, completely free and open. If you are a threat hunter or want to get involved with threat hunting, this is where you should go. It's organized very similar to MITRE ATT&CK framework. I just wanted to make sure that we got that thrown out there.
This is cool.
But what I really like about this is the way that she organized this is it also encourages people to expand on others. So these are kind of like the the flames are like the well-known and vetted type threat hunts, and embers need help. Like, so have the threat hunting community kind of like add in and build those threat hunts. And,
Bill, is this like a way to describe IOCs in order to conduct better threat hunts? So
the methodology is that you use a scientific method, right? So you come up with a hypothesis. I believe that threat actors are using IoT devices to access my network, right?
Very high level hypothesis.
Very high level. And then you start to develop how would I prove or disprove that hypothesis just using the scientific method? And so like when you get started with threat hunting, those first couple months of hypotheses
Yep.
are pretty
Hypotheses. Yep.
are pretty easy. But then after time, like you get lazy, and so this is a really, really very active GitHub, and just if that's something that if that's something that you're interested in, or if you don't have a threat hunting program in your enterprise security program, this is a great place to start. So I just wanted to make sure
Awesome.
I got the word out about that.
All right, you got that. I want to bogart the mic for the last couple of minutes.
You have 60 seconds.
I want the mic.
Not according to my clock, but I don't know why. I don't know why all of a sudden we're like
blowing time.
All right. So my story number 6, real quickly, Paul. It's a local TV news up in the Boston area about a Stop and Shop being
yes, I heard
hit
this.
by a cybersecurity breach. Yep. And the news report, they're actually on location at the Stop and Shop in Warwick.
Oh my god, dude!
And I'm like,
I watched the news.
Been to that Stop and Shop.
Yes, dude. I watched the news and I was dying laughing because there was a cyber attack against a parent company for Stop and Shop, and they went to, I believe it was Seekonk, Massachusetts. Larry,
I thought it was Warwick.
They went somewhere where Larry and I in New England know the place. And started interviewing
my
people.
Story number 6, they're at the Stop and Shop in Warwick, which I'm pretty sure that's the one right up the street from the studio.
We're in Warwick in the studio. Yep.
But I wanted to point out Larry's story number 1, which is 2024 credit card theft season arrives, which is actually a really great article that goes into a lot of detail about a lot of different types of attacks that are focused on e-commerce websites, which shameless plug, I think it's my story number 3. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow, which for people that listen to this is probably yesterday, but there'll be a recording of it. I'm doing the PCI has new requirements that are starting to focus on looking ways to protect against what's called a mage card attack, which is web skimming, and that's a lot of Larry's article number 1, or the different types of. I think it's interesting that the typical security world just calls it malware, but in PCI it's very focused on, we call it a mage card attack because it's a web skimming attack, and it's a way to steal payment card information.
When I read this article, I'm like, whoa, mage card's still a thing? Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, my article, because I was putting together slides for this webinar I'm doing tomorrow, which is, hey people, PCI 4.0, which became effective this past April 1st, had new requirements that everybody gets a grace period, so they don't become effective until next April 1st. But there's 2 requirements there that has captured the imagination of actually a lot of vendors that hey, we do this. So for the very first time in my memory, at the PCI community meetings, there were vendors there. They're like, we actually can help you meet this specific requirement. And you don't usually get that from vendors. I don't see that in vendors. But the idea is mage card attacks go after the JavaScript that gets loaded into the client side experience of web applications. And the new requirement 1 is you need to know what all these scripts are that are loading in your web pages that are presenting what they call the payment page, and make sure that they're authorized, inventory them, authorized, and make sure they haven't been altered in some way. So, validate them in some way. And then there's another requirement to have some sort of detection and response if something has been attempted in terms of tampering, not only with these scripts, but also with the way that the URLs are presented. When you're on a website and you think you're going to someplace new and it just presents a URL, but it's really just a JavaScript on the back end. So I appreciated Larry's article because it was very detailed in terms of a lot of different types of attacks that fit into this category. So it's real. And then I had, my story number 2 was, just in the last couple of weeks, I forget exactly the date that it happened, but these things are happening to this day. these types of mage cart attacks. Mage cart being the APT, that's what the name that's given to them. But they're not focusing on stealing the data from your repository. They're figuring out ways to attack the scripts that are loaded in your website, in your web application, that your customers, your consumers see. That you order something, you pay for it, and the transaction goes through, but somebody's intercepting and skimming the data. That's essentially what's happening there. That's it.
That's time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly.
Go Bitcoin.
Go Bitcoin, take us out.
Over and Bitcoin go out.